This is Talk Over Tea,
a place for a casual conversation about life in local government.
With Kassandra
and Claudel Frederic,
elected officials from the city of Amesbury, Massachusetts.
Relax with us for a moment. The tea is hot.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
So excited that you guys are here with us today.
Yes, it's going to be a great episode. We have talked before about the city budget, and we are going to talk today about setting the tax rate, which is a piece of the budget process, but happens months later and maybe just as complicated, but important for everyone to understand.
Just as important, for sure.
Something that City Council's been deeply involved in. So we're going to do our best to explain the process and give you some information about where you can learn more. And yeah, hopefully answer some of your questions about our tax rate and your tax bills.
Right.
How's that? I brought my tax bills. We both have lots of paper out and notes.
Got my laptop.
Because there's a lot of data and a lot of calculations, and there's lots of information for us to share. So we'll do our best to stick with our guidelines of our time frame. We don't want to keep you for too long and lose you. So Claudel, we just set our tax rate. Let's just start with, what was that process like for you? How did you approach setting the tax rate?
Well, first of all, thank you to the assessor's office.
Yes, the assessor's office is critical.
Yes, very, very much so. So for us, we received the bill and we kind of looked at it. It gives a few different options on how we could disperse the burden of the tax, right?
Yeah.
So there is a single tax rate, which would be they call it a rate of 1.
Yeah.
And then the split, you could go all the way up to 1.5. And there's limits. We can't go higher than 1.5.
Yeah.
And we can't go lower than 1. So for each shift, it moves everybody's burden a little bit. Right? So we kind of have to look at every piece and figure out, when does it make sense to actually shift the burden here or there, either to the residentials or to the CIPs, commercial, industrial, private properties.
Yeah.
So kind of just looking at all that data, again, connecting with the assessor's office, seeing what they gave us, and kind of just not just on paper, but also understanding the makeup of your community, I feel like plays a huge role in it. Because this is one of those situations, if you're just looking at data, you might just say, oh yeah, this makes sense. But if you're part of that landscape, you understand some things may not make sense for what we have going on in our community. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. So that's where my head goes.
Yeah, that's great. There was a ton of information provided by the assessor's office, lots of numbers for you to look at. And, going along with what you just said, really important for us to understand the makeup of our community. And another example of how hard it is for us to compare ourselves to a neighboring community or somewhere nearby, and to say, well, they do it, so we can too, because it really does matter, who is in your community and what's going on at the moment, and, what your trends are. And, even in Amesbury, I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions that we would need to be able to answer before we made a change in our tax split and went to what they sort of refer to as a split tax rate. So we, our city council approved a rate of 1. So we have a single tax rate. So that means that when we set the tax rate, which in Amesbury, the vote was, it's an estimated number until the state certifies it, but it was $15.30.
Correct.
Right?
Which is lower than
last year by about 30 cents. Last year was $15.64. And so that means that everyone pays their tax bill based on that same rate.
Correct.
So it's applied at a value of, for every $1,000 worth of value in your property, you pay $15.64 in taxes. So the more your property is worth, the bigger your bill is, and the lower that your property is valued at, then the lower your bill would be. But that means everybody pays based on the same rate per $1,000 of value.
Correct. And I think some people are probably wondering, okay, if my tax rate went down to $1,530 compared to last year at $1,564, then why did my taxes go up?
Your bill, why did your bill go up?
Why did your bill go up?
So it's just an inverse relationship with your value.
Correct.
Values go up every year, especially in our region. Values have been going up very quickly, like really exponentially. I actually don't know the number of what they went up this year, but I know in the years past they've been going up like 14% on average, which is a lot really quickly. And so as your value goes up, it's, that is sort of what allows us to decrease the tax rate. But what we have big picture is a number that we have to raise in taxes. So if you go back to that budget process that we did over the summer where we set our budget and we said, I have the chart in front of me, we said, 74% of the pie, that last bit of what we need to make up our, to balance our budget, 74% needs to come from taxpayers. So we just know we need to bring in that much money and it has to fit within our levy. So we have to be able to, do that within the constraints of Prop 2.5. And to get to that number, we take all of the values in town and we divide it by, how much money we need to get to that 74%, and it gives us a tax rate.
Yeah,
right?
Literally, that's how the tax rate works.
Yeah.
And to your statement that you made earlier about how much of it increased the property values, it looks like, so for single families in 2024,
you got it.
the average was $582,514, and there was an increase of 7.52%, which brings it up to 626,318. So this is exactly, and that's for
so you
single
get like
families.
a 7.5% increase. But look at the condos.
Yeah, so condos, and it makes sense, right? Condos has increased 9.77% over the year. And it makes sense because condos are more affordable, right, for people to get into the market. A lot of first-time home buyers coming in. So they're not able to compete at the level of a single family where the average is like 580, but they could compete at 367 of an average, so.
When you think about the trend, just the last few years, so if you went back a few years, the single family home values were increasing again. I think I said it was like something like 14%, but condos were not increasing that much. Condos really haven't seen that type of a boom in recent years. And this is, right up your alley in real estate, right? Condos were not seeing the demand in the real estate market that single family homes were.
Yeah.
And it's market driven.
Right. Exactly. Basically our inventory is trash, basically, right now.
So we don't control what the market is doing and the values. But that is just a factor in the equation that, again, it sort of spits out this tax rate for us. And so, when we think about that tax rate, and you think about values and that relationship, people talk about our taxes being really high or, no matter sort of where you live, I think people would say the same thing. So I did a quick search of the tax rates in the communities in Massachusetts. This information is online. You can just Google tax rates by town in Massachusetts and you'll get all of them. And you can search by year and by town and you can export it to Excel and then play around with the data. And you can pull multiple years.
Tell us.
It's great.
Stop. Tell us. I want to know, where are we?
Okay, so and I'm pulling 2024 because we're just setting 2025. So not every town has 2025 in there yet. So for last year, so it'll be interesting to see how this might change this year. Last year's lowest tax rate in Massachusetts was $2.12.
Yeah, that's crazy.
$2.
Yeah, guys, I know that sounds amazing to you, but I do not want a tax rate of $2.
It's like you couldn't go anymore.
12 cents. Because if you do, that means your property is worth like $3 million.
It means your value is
super high.
Just sky high.
Yeah.
So I looked at, some of the towns that are down there. The $2.12 in 24 was Chilmark. Some of the other towns down in that range were Edgartown and Nantucket, right? So it's the Cape. And the highest was $22.15. And that was Wendell. And some other communities in that sort of high range. The next few communities were like West Hampton, Longmeadow, and Greenfield. So that's Western Mass. So you can tell there's, sort of regionally assimilating, right? Like they're very similar. So Amesbury last year was $15.64. We were 56th. 56. There's 351 cities and towns. We were 56th, so we're top 20%. Again, when you think about all of the communities in Massachusetts and you think about the services we offer, the lifestyle that we offer, our location, I guess, people may disagree with me, but I don't know, top 20%.
Yeah, I think we're winning.
I think we're in a good position.
We're winning.
So that's where we are, top 20%. The average was $12.57, so we're higher than average. Maybe we want to keep bringing that down, and the way to do that
is new growth.
It's
sure.
to increase the amount of money we can levy, which we do by increasing value.
Right.
So to increase value, we've talked about new growth before. Just regular investments that people make in their property, economic development, building on property that is undeveloped, changing what is on a piece of property to get new value out of it. All counts towards new growth and increases our levy. So we typically have about $450,000 in new growth. We are starting to see an increase with a real boom in investments in Amesbury. And we expect the next few years to have really high returns too. And so overall, yes, that increases what we're allowed to levy out of the properties in town. But it also helps to spread the burden because there's more people here to help pay the bill.
And I think that's what people really need to understand about new growth. Like, it's literally helping us split the burden. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And
new growth is good.
For sure.
Yeah, so there's a little rundown on sort of like other communities and their tax rates. So we set it at $15.30 this year, so it's down about 34 cents. And we'll see, maybe I'll give an update after we see everybody put their FY25 tax rates into the state. So it has to be certified by the state now. City Council took their vote. And once it's certified, we can send you a tax bill.
Right.
In January, which is the best way to start a new year. I know everybody loves to get their tax bill in January.
So, to go to the tax bills, kind of, so the new tax bill comes in January, but you get what looks like a tax bill before that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. So because the tax rate is set when it is, and the budget has already been set, we've already started collecting money from you, right? We need revenue to start paying the bills in July. Our fiscal year starts July 1st, and we need revenue to be able to operate. So we start billing you. So your tax bills are due, August 1st and November 1st. Those are the first two bills you've got to think of it as a fiscal year. So those, and I have all my tax bills in front of me. If you're not watching the video, just listening. So I have like 4 years worth of tax bills. So if you look at those closely, they actually say preliminary real estate tax bill. So we have made an estimate about what you owe in taxes because we don't have a tax rate yet, and we don't know what your estimated value is going to be or your obligation to the tax levy. So we've made an estimate. Those are preliminary. So those are your August 1st and your November 1st bills. Now we get to late November, early December, we set a tax rate and we've certified your value, and we can send you an actual. So if you look at the top of your bill that you're going to get in January, and it's going to be due in February, and your last quarter is due in May, those say actual. So at the top, those say actual real estate tax bill, and they're going to be higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what people tend to do is they take those two and they put them side by side and they say, oh my gosh, my taxes went up so much. But what we're doing is we're collecting a year's worth of an increase in 2 quarters, because remember, your first 2 were an estimate, the second 2 are real. So now we're collecting your year's worth of an increase in just 2 payments. So you get hit hard with your February and your May bills. And it's, we think of things, we tend to think of things on a calendar year, right? You get that January bill, but you have to look at the fact that those, and it says right on it, 3rd and 4th quarter. That's the end of our fiscal year. We're closing out our budget with those payments. And so look at your tax bills.
Yep.
There is an abatement process if you think it's actually wrong. The other thing we hear from people a lot about, regarding how much their bill might have gone up is actually more to do with whether they have their mortgage company paying their tax bill.
Right.
So when this goes up, their mortgage company might decide that they want to keep more in escrow. Maybe their insurance also went up for the year. And so their mortgage payment went up a lot.
A lot, yep.
But it's not all their taxes. So look at your bills, pull these out, especially if you have your taxes being paid by your mortgage company. I know you just take these from the mailbox and you put them in a file or you throw them out.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Or you complain about it online.
So look at your tax bills, and you want to make sure you're looking at actual, the 2 preliminary and the 2 actual, and you look at those as a full year. Because then when you get your following year and you get your 2 estimates, those are based on the last 2 bills, which were actual. So we sort of carry those forward as estimates for the coming year, and then you get another 2 actuals. So you sort of think of it as this cycle: estimates, actuals, estimates, actuals. We take the actuals to make the next year's estimates, and then we get another round of actuals to help balance things out, and it sort of incrementally goes up. But you have to think of that fiscal year as what your taxes actually went up. The other thing you can do is our website has the list of all property values. Once they're certified, we post it on the website, and you can find this year's values and last year's values. So you can look at your property to see how much did your property go up in value, and you can calculate it, right? We said the tax rate is based on every $1,000 of value. So you take your property value, divide it by 1,000, multiply it by that rate, and you can find out what your tax bill as a total for the year, your obligation is. Go back to last year's, do the same thing, and compare those 2 numbers. That's how much your bill went up for the year. So I've been stopped on the street and people say, my tax bill went up $200 a month. And I say, well, tell me where you live, because I'm pretty sure it didn't go up $200 a month. And then we can go back and look at the values, and we can check those numbers and do the math. And there's a number of reasons that maybe, again, their mortgage company is collecting more money, or they weren't comparing the right bills. And, you really need to sort of understand how that number is generated. So
do you know how the abatement process works, or who do they contact to do an abatement?
Yep. So if you believe that your value is inaccurate, and that is generating a bill that you believe is inaccurate, you would go to the assessor's office.
Okay.
There is a time restriction on that. That's set by statute. So you want to do it right away. When you get that January bill, which shows you what the certified value of your property is, and you think it's wrong, go to the assessor's office. I forget the deadline, but I feel like it's like February 1st. There's not a lot of time. So you need to go to the assessor's office and file for an abatement if you believe that it's inaccurate.
Would that be the same thing for an exemption as well? Or we're not sure?
That's a great question. I think the exemptions have a later time frame. I think the deadline is later because it's not, the exemption would be for next year's bill. So, so I think it's a spring, look on the assessor's website. Okay. But there are exemptions. And there's also, we have a senior and veteran tax work-off program, which allows, those members of our community to contribute in other ways and work in city offices in order to get a discount on their bill. So those tend to be a little bit later in the spring, I think, so that we can line them up for next year's tax bills.
And that's called what?
The Senior and Veteran Tax Work-Off Program.
I think that's great information for people to know. Yeah, this is really great because I think a lot of people the people that are really affected by the increases are, the folks that are no longer working and they have a fixed income, right? So when they see that increase in their taxes, I think those are the folks that are mostly affected by it.
Yeah.
Not to say everybody's not affected by it.
Oh, for sure.
But I'd say that's the demographic that's mostly affected by it.
Yeah, and
So-
we do have a variety of exemptions. Certainly would love to be able to do more for people. But check out the assessor's office. They have a list of exemptions, and then the senior and veteran tax work-off program is a great option too. And we love having those members of our community work, in our offices. And I know they appreciate the sort of discount, earned money. I mean, they earn the money off of their tax bill. So we used to actually have the timeline for that was like a fall application, but people get that January bill and that's when they panic. They get it in January and think, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to afford this increase. So we moved all the deadlines to the spring so that you get that January bill and you can come in and talk about exemptions or apply for that work-off program. So everything's at the assessor's office. People come in all the time and say, I don't know which office to go to. So the assessor's office is responsible for establishing the value of your property, setting this tax rate, and then to generate the bill, it goes over to the treasurer's office, and the treasurer's office sends out the bill, and that's where you go back in to pay, and that's where they process that. So that's a big picture sort of timeline and review of the tax bills, which we always just try to remind folks of how to really review those details and understand where the bill comes from.
Right. Perfect. I mean, I think this was all really good and valuable information.
Yeah.
And I just want to come back to
what did we miss?
Let people know that I don't think we missed much of anything. You did a good job talking. But I just want to kind of go back and just kind of mention like how many households are splitting this burden right now.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to reiterate how important new growth is.
Yeah.
Currently, we have about 7,000 units maybe splitting this burden.
I don't have that number in front of me, but we have just over 7,000 parcels in our city total.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, being assessed and actually paying towards this bill
Would be lower because there's
lower.
61A properties and things like that.
Yep.
And I think you know that number better than I do.
I think I do have that number actually. So the number for residential units total in Amesbury is 5,698, which is about 88%.
Yep. That's residential.
Exactly. So that's the residential. And for CIP, we have about 519 units. So that gives us a total of 6,487 units that are splitting this burden right now.
Yeah.
So new growth with more people splitting this, just adding value to your property is certainly going to help lessen this burden.
Yeah. So just for someone to sort of understand if you're like more of a visual person. So if we had a parcel that then, it was one parcel, say it was valued at $500,000, that is one parcel in that 5,000 number. And then someone comes in and they put in a subdivision and they take that one parcel and they divide it into 4 parcels. So now you have 4 homeowners. Now you have 4 tax bills. And each one of those parcels is worth $500,000 instead of just one at $500,000.
Right.
So that is how you can sort of picture new growth making a difference in our tax bills and our tax levy, right? So that's where we generate new growth and help to spread the burden. And it's also, we talked earlier about the ability to sort of compare one community to another. When you think about first that split of residential and commercial properties, but then also the number of properties that they have, right? So you could be Everett, which is, it's like 2 square miles or something, right? Or you could be, what do we say? Greenfield is probably a little bigger. It's probably a little more spread out and, a lot different landscape. So that matters when you are looking at, how we sort of, how we calculate these things, right? Who is paying the bill?
Yeah.
It all matters.
Yeah, in Amesbury, we're definitely, like we said, it's a bedroom community where a majority of it is residential.
Yeah. So we actually, so at one point there was a vote to split the tax rate, which would shift that. So the tax rate that we have of $15.30, right? We said everyone's paying the same amount per $1,000 of value. And you had started off by saying you could go up to 1.5, which means commercial businesses would pay a different rate. At one point in our history, that was voted on, and we did have a different commercial rate, and it was changed back very quickly.
Right.
And like you just said, we have a very small portion of our parcels that are commercial industrial
Correct.
parcels. And so they already make up such a small portion to then that to me is shifting the burden. A tax rate of 1 is the most equitable way to do it, where everyone just pays the same, and it's based on how valuable your property is. If you start to shift, I think you really disrupt the market.
I have to agree. And I don't want to sit here and try to convince anybody because the vote has already been done.
Right.
But
just for fact, like just for informational purposes, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like an example, like I would kind of like to speak on is when the rate is split and the burden goes on to like the CIP, like commercial. Now you're talking about affecting like your smaller businesses, right? A lot of these smaller businesses are renting from owners that own these buildings that they take the taxes, but they just shift it over to the tenants. They're on a triple net lease, right? So this tenant that's now they're responsible for the tax increase, right? So that's a possible extra $500 for them per month. So the same cookie you were paying $5 for is now going to be $10 because they have to raise the price in order to afford their monthly increase.
Yeah.
So although like on the residential side, you'd probably be saving about, I don't know, maybe $5 a month, you're going to be spending it on the goods that you're, accessing locally.
Right.
So
yeah, just really, tough. I do think it just really disrupts the market. And for a community like us, we talked about really knowing your community. We just don't have that large of a portion of our tax base being commercial and the type of commercial businesses we have right now. And I'm not saying never, but I'm saying right now, just really don't support shifting and voting on a split tax rate.
No, not when 88% of it is residential and only like 12% is.
And I'd love to have the time, but to really research the communities who do have a split tax rate, the type of commercial base they have, what that commercial base was like before they voted on a split, what's it like after, what was the trend, and has that split impacted their commercial businesses? We were just talking before we started, and I looked at a few of the bigger cities near us, and they've maxed out that split. They've gone to a full 1.5. So their residential tax rate might be closer to $10, but their commercial is closer to $20.
Right.
That's a big difference.
So kind of knowing like what kind of commercial they have, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you have a mall, right, that's different. A huge industrial park, closer to Boston.
Right.
Yeah. I just think you have to really, there's got to be a pretty in-depth research analysis of the impacts before you just
change it. And like you said, like we were talking about earlier, the location of the community and the makeup of that community matters. Like we can't compare ourselves to a community that's closest to the city, to Boston. The activity level is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus us. I mean, we're getting there, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah.
So, but I think this was a great talk though.
I could talk about this for hours. Which is, I guess, a good thing, right? So like core responsibility of the mayor is to manage the budget and be a good steward of your tax dollars. So thanks for indulging me.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility to set the tax rate. So
absolutely.
Really important. And, it's probably one of the first things people talk about is their tax bill when you talk about anything, right? Well, how's it going to affect my tax bill, and what is that? What's that going to cost? And so an important piece of what we do. And thanks for listening.
Yep.
And hopefully you've learned something new. If you have questions, as always, leave us comments, and send us a message. And we'll be back. We'll be back for more tea.
Yes.
And appreciate everybody tuning in. So thanks for a good deep dive into taxes, Claudel.
Yes, this was a good one. Good one. All right, guys, enjoy yourselves. Have a great day.